Most sales teams don't need more tech or training. They need coaching. Because when reps show up curious, authentic, and prepared, they become trusted partners, not pitch machines. That's a quote from Lee Levitt and a sneak peek at today's episode. Hi there, I'm Carrie Curran, B2B Revenue Growth Executive Advisor, Industry Analyst, and host of Revenue Boost, a marketing podcast. Every episode, I sit down with top experts to bring you actionable strategies that drive real results. If you're serious about business growth, hit subscribe and stay ahead of your competition today. In The Real Pipeline Fix, How Coaching, Curiosity, and Authenticity Closes More Deals, I sit down with Lee Levitt. He's a sales effectiveness coach and founder of the Acelera Group. We uncover why most teams miss quota and what leaders can do to fix it. From deliberate practice to buyer psychology, Lee shares how small behavior shifts lead to bigger sales wins. Be sure to stay tuned to the end where Lee shares how sales enablement leaders can earn a strategic voice and why it's your unfair advantage for long-term growth. Let's go. So welcome, Lee. Please introduce yourself and share your background and expertise.
Thanks, Carrie. I appreciate you having me on. You know, I run my own podcast, and it's a little interesting being the guest rather than the host. Usually, I ask the question, "Who is Carrie?" So you're asking, "Who is Lee?" I'm a coach at heart. I am on this earth to help people transform. I do it personally. I do it professionally. My view is I get to help people help their customers to be more successful. So when I'm working with a salesperson, I'm thinking about their call to Cincinnati Children's Hospital and how they and we can improve patient outcomes. So I have that long reach. I've been in the tech world a long time. I've run marketing, I've run sales, I've been an analyst, I've been in sales enablement at a couple of very large companies, Oracle and Google. I've started companies, I've closed companies. And after I left Google a couple of years ago, I went back to my roots of sales productivity and coaching. So I work with organizations that want to improve their effectiveness, sales effectiveness, and I work with individuals that want to have more fun selling.
I love that. And I think too, one of the things that a differentiation you made is you're not a sales trainer, you're not training, but you're coaching. So just talk a bit about the difference there.
So I have to tell you a secret, Carrie, it's just between you and me. I'm not actually a sales coach. I'm a life coach for salespeople. So usually salespeople come in with some head trash or inner voice or inner critic or inner judge that says, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I have to look like this, or I have to be like this, or I have to act like this. And when they're not authentic, their results are subpar. And so to get to your question, training is the delivery of information, the transfer of information. Here's our new widget. It's version 3.2. It's better than the old widget. Tell the customers about it.
Yep.
That's training. Coaching is helping people discover different ways of doing and different ways of being. And then in addition with coaching, I do a lot of deliberate practice. Some people call it role play. I call it deliberate practice. We don't have enough time. We don't give people enough time to practice their skills in the sales world. The last thing we want to do is practice our sales skills in front of a customer. Let's practice it in a safe place. And by the way, to that end, I recently joined an improv group. And oh boy, talking about practicing being attentive and being in the moment and responding without having to think first. Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that those skills translating very well.
Yep.
So it's interesting because when we first met, I made that mistake as well, saying, "Oh, tell me about your sales training." And so I love your strategy and approach, and I think it's so important because even thinking about today, sales people are inundated with new tech platforms,
Hmm.
best practices, scripts. But to your point, if they're just, presented the information and saying, go now go implement this into your every day, there you're not going to see the value long term. And I was sharing an example I heard recently of, when the sales leaders, the team managers need to shadow their
Hmm.
reps from time to time. And the point that was made was that so often you'll find that the reps aren't actually using the technology, um, utilizing it in a way that it's helping them, or getting the return on investment that the company's making. And so talk about kind of how you're helping those teams and those managers.
Well, funny story for you, Carrie. 10 or so years ago, I was in strategic sales for a marketing analytics company, and I had four strategic accounts that I was calling on. When I first joined the company, and I had known the principals for a long time, the CEO said, "Here's our 100-slide deck. Make sure you're conversant in it so you can deliver it properly to your customers." And
Yeah.
my customers were IBM
Mm-hmm.
and GE and a couple of others, like big companies,
Yeah.
pretty savvy folks. And I said to my CEO, "Michael, in this environment, I sell using a whiteboard. And when we start, the whiteboard's empty. And what I want
Mm-hmm.
to do is sketch out the issues, the
Mm-hmm.
gap where the customer is facing challenges, and
Yep.
then we go through the as is and the to be states and figure out if it's worth getting there." And he said, "Yeah, that's nice, but I want you to use the slide deck." So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes sales leadership isn't on the right page, right?
Right.
Sometimes salespeople have a better understanding of what works.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
challenge is that in some cases, sales leadership is right. And that reminds me of a situation where I had changed the messaging for a professional services company, and the sales team hadn't picked up on the changes, and so they were still using the old messaging. So it's a partnership that has to happen between
Yep.
leadership and the field
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that what the leadership is providing is useful and what the team is doing is effective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can't blame one or the other. We
True.
have to
True.
look at
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. True. Absolutely, agree with that. I think, to your point, if the if the sales rep isn't using the technology, it might be more than just lack of understanding and use
Hmm.
of the tool. Um, but with there's not that, to your point, partnership in coaching, you're not going to figure that out.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah. So, what do you see as some of the skills that sales reps or sales leaders are lacking the most these days?
Sales reps or sales leaders?
Well, all right, let's start with leaders.
So I can't provide a general assessment of sales leaders because they run the gamut from very savvy leaders
Hmm.
who have high EQ and
Hmm.
really understand how to help their people engage with customers, to the
Hmm.
drill sergeants who say just keep making calls until you
Yeah.
get someone who says yes.
Yep.
I've
Yep.
seen it all. I've worked with all of them,
Hmm.
and some have more skills than others. It really depends on what the organization wants to achieve. If the organization truly wants to add value to their
Hmm.
customers,
Hmm.
then we tend to find better sales leadership in place. If their goal is to get big and exit, if their only goal is to drive revenue, if they're leaving customers, slashed and burned, then we see some bad behavior, so to speak. It might be okay in the short term from a
Yeah.
revenue standpoint or an organizational standpoint. It doesn't serve customers. It doesn't serve the organization long
Yeah.
term.
Yeah. I see that. I can see that. And so for the sales reps, then what are you seeing the skills that are lacking?
So sales reps are in a really uncomfortable position.
Hmm.
Most of the time, their direct managers are providing inspections, doing inspections. How's this deal going? Show me your pipeline. What's going on? Tell me more. There's no coaching. There's no
Right.
support. There's no deliberate practice around skills that actually work.
Hmm.
Because most first line sales managers used to be lone wolves. They used to
Yeah.
be high performing salespeople who were promoted out of what they are good at into managerial spots. And their perspective is, well, that's the obvious career path. And I have a number of friends that have taken that career path and then reversed it, moved
Yeah.
from rep to manager
Mm-hmm.
to VP to group VP, all the way back down to enterprise rep. And
Yep.
a good friend of mine said, Lee, I'm having more fun.
Yep.
I'm spending less time. I'm making more money.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And
See
so
that.
for me, what I look for in a rep, number one, is curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Are they curious? Are they looking under rocks? Are they looking at 10 Qs? Are they listening to podcasts? Are they reading blogs about what their customer is up to? Are they
Mm-hmm.
creating business value hypotheses? I think we can help your business improve their results by doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more. And the second critical attribute, and it's not skill, it's attribute, is authenticity.
Yep.
Customers can smell inauthenticity a mile away,
Yep.
and you don't get time and access if you're not authentic. You
Mm-hmm.
might get some conversation. It's not going to lead anywhere. You
Mm-hmm.
have to make a
Mm-hmm.
deposit in the relationship bank account to get more time and access. And then you make more and more deposits. It's just like networking, Carrie. If you go to a networking event and your sole purpose there is to get leads, gimme, gimme, gimme,
Yeah.
you're going to be standing alone at the punch bowl,
Mm-hmm.
right? If
Mm-hmm.
your mindset is, I'm here to help others and I want to provide introductions for other people, I want to figure out who I can connect to whom.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have a flock of people around you.
Yeah.
Selling,
Definitely.
enterprise selling is no different.
Yeah. I agree. And so much of it is about, to your point, that building trust that authenticity brings, and empathy and listening as well, right? Just,
Mhm.
and so are you able to kind of coach your the sellers that you're working with? How do you coach them on those, like I said, attributes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, it's a focus on deliberate practice of what's working and what's not working.
Mm-hmm.
So one example, I'm working with a young SDR. This young man's been selling for, I don't know, about 3 months. He called me by accident and tried to sell me something. And he called me up and it was a good intro. And I said, tell me about my company. Because he started off right. Tell me
Yeah.
about my company. And he gave a good spiel. And I said, good news and bad news. The good news is you did a good job. The bad news is you have bad data, not my company. And so I've been coaching him for a while. I said, look, you've got a spark. I want to coach you. And so I'm coaching him at no charge, just for fun. Because I love
Yeah.
coaching SDRs because it's the young malleable minds that set them
Yep. And it's a
set them
hard
off on the right
job.
path.
Yeah.
It is a hard job. So he was complaining that the meetings he was setting, people weren't showing up for. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, let's take so a little bit of diagnostic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing a good job getting the conversation. Somebody eventually says, okay. And usually that means I just want to get you off the phone.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, you're doing a good job with the initial open. Where you miss is getting them engaged, really for them, right?
Yeah.
What's in it for them? So
Mm-hmm.
we did some deliberate practice around how can I get this person to actually want to come to the meeting?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we practice that. In the same way in the enterprise, uh, I look at where salespeople are preparing for sales calls. And I'll give you
Mm-hmm.
another example. A coaching client of mine was calling on two people at an insurance company, and they had been with a company for 15 years. And so I said, your number one question is, tell me, why have you been with this company so long? 20 minutes later, 20 minutes later,
Yeah.
she said, that's fascinating. And the fact that she showed interest
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in something that had nothing to do with selling them
Yep. Yep.
the company's product, she
Yeah.
got a second meeting with the head of strategy at that company. So
I
when you're
love that.
authentic,
Yeah.
you get that access. And so it's a matter of looking at the process, right? So those of us who are consultants, we are um, we are process experts. We
Mm-hmm.
we we see the patterns, right? You and I see patterns, right? We see what works, we see what doesn't work. We can identify very quickly this person's going down this path, and without an intervention, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And with an intervention, this is going to happen. So it's
Yeah.
a matter of pattern matching and then facilitating the learning, not teaching the learning,
Yeah.
Facilitating. Teaching means I'm giving you information.
Mhm.
Facilitating means I'm helping you discover how to be different.
Hey everyone, it's me, Carrie Curran. If you're a B2B company that sells to marketers, whether you're an agency, MarTech, or AdTech, and your revenue is either flattening, declining, or just not growing fast enough, I can help. I've spent my entire career selling, marketing, and servicing marketers, so I know firsthand the challenges they face, the buying decisions they make, and what actually moves the needle. The truth is, most marketing strategies aren't built for revenue growth, but mine are. As your fractional chief growth officer, I'll bring revenue focused marketing strategies designed specifically for selling to marketers, deep expertise in agency, MarTech, and AdTech buying behaviors, modern go to market strategies that include everything from brand awareness to driving loyalty and retention, and a track record of doubling and even tripling revenue for B2B companies just like yours. So if you're tired of your stagnant results and you're ready to build a marketing engine that actually drives revenue, let's talk. Visit revenuebasedmarketing.com or connect with me on LinkedIn to schedule a consultation. Together, let's build a smarter, more profitable path forward. RBMA, Revenue Based Marketing Advisors, we're revenue-based marketing that works. Yeah, yeah, I love that, and it's so important, and that's such a good example of. I love that example of tell me why you're been at your company for so long, because it really starts to build that relationship and that trust. So it's really valuable. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what are the other challenges you or kind of areas that you mentioned that you see a lot is the lack of preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So, talk a bit about kind of how your sales reps really need to kind of do better there, and what they can do to improve.
Yeah, Carrie, the challenge we have is that sales leadership wants salespeople to make calls, to make calls, to make calls, to make calls.
Yeah.
Because without engaging with customers, you can't sell.
Hmm.
On
Hmm.
the other hand, if you're not engaging with value, you're not going
Yep.
to sell. And the example that I give is painting a room.
Hmm.
90% of the time you paint a room, you don't have a paintbrush in your hand. You're sanding, you're spackling, you're patching, you're moving furniture, you're making covers, you're checking the paint shade,
Yep.
you're preparing.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
maybe 5% of the time or 10% of the time, you actually are painting.
Hmm.
Selling is the same way. And even with that SDR that I mentioned earlier, he might not spend 2 hours before each call because he's making 30 calls a day. He might spend 5 minutes. And that's 5 minutes more than the person sitting next to him. And with
Yep.
enterprise salespeople calling on major accounts,
Yep.
an hour or a couple of hours is time well spent. And so, Carrie, you asked how I help. I actually sit with a salesperson and walk them through. We discovered together, this coaching client, we discovered together that those two women had been with a company more than 15 years, right? We both
Hmm.
had LinkedIn up. I
Yep.
said, look at this. And so I'm showing salespeople what good looks like.
Yep. Yep.
And so the first three times I'm doing it, the fourth time I'm watching them doing it. And then boom, they leave the nest.
Yep. Yep. And I know AI really helps that process. It helps
Hmm.
salespeople get more data more quickly, but
Hmm.
it's not a silver bullet, right?
Yeah, exactly. We are so in love with AI. AI was only invented 3 years ago, right?
Mhm.
No, no, we've been playing with AI since the 80s,
Yeah.
right? So at least I played with some early AI stuff on IBM PCs. So a long time ago. I won't mention the year, but I would date myself. Um, so AI is this cure all and end all, right? I've got a lawnmower outside using AI to mow my grass, but I wouldn't use it to prep for a sales call.
Right.
The opportunity is that AI tools can give you a lot of information about Charlie, the person
Hmm.
you want to call on. The
Hmm.
bad news is if you count on AI to tell you about Charlie and to tell you about Charlie's business, you may not have internalized it.
Yeah.
And so you have to use it as a tool. And then
Hmm.
the salesperson has to sit down and think, So what is this, all this information? What does it mean?
Yeah.
What's the conversation I want to have, not the AI bot? What's the conversation I want to have with Charlie?
Mm-hmm.
What's my business value hypothesis? How am I going to make a deposit in the relationship bank account? And if I do that, then AI is a tool as opposed to the driver of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's so important. And it's not just, to your point, getting the surface. It's really understanding and demonstrating that you understand their pain points and
Mhm.
how you can help. So it's such a smart recommendation. One of the challenges that you mentioned that you often see, or that sellers often see, is buyer paralysis.
Mhm.
And so, talk about kind of how you ways sellers can kind of use that research and authenticity to get in front of that.
Yeah, so good question, Carrie. First, a lot of salespeople say if there's, BANT, the first initial in BANT is budget. That's crap. I don't personally, if I'm selling, I don't want to find budget. I want to help set budget, right? If budget is already set, someone else probably has helped them set it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
want to find a place where there's just some latent pain. Now, my clients in big companies and smaller companies typically they don't have that much flexibility. They tend to be in environments where this is a replacement or an upgrade or a competitive environment, and there's already budget.
Right.
And what I've seen over the past couple of years is there's so much turmoil in the business world. I'm not talking about recent turmoil. I'm talking about turmoil that goes back at least 5 years. That customers are paralyzed because here's our thought process: if I don't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
I know what that looks like. If I
Yeah.
continue to drive my 8-year-old car, I know it needs oil once a month. If I buy a new car, how reliable is that going to be? My payments are going to go up. It might not be as comfortable, right? So
Yeah.
buyers at some level are stuck in the business as usual space. They
Mm-hmm.
know what that looks like. They know how to deal with it. It might be really painful. They know how to
Yeah.
deal with it.
Yeah.
And when a salesperson or an organization comes in and says, "Buy our thing, convert over, migrate, modernize, replace," at some level they're saying, "We're going to take you from a known to an unknown unknown," right? And the risk perception, the risk meter goes through the roof.
Yeah.
And the risk perception is the number one driver of purchasing or not purchasing. If I can show low risk for
Mm-hmm.
moving forward, I
Yeah.
get a sale. If the
Yeah.
risk is unknown or if it's higher, no sale. It's that
Yeah.
simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so salespeople, through authenticity, through making promises and following up on promises, right? I
Mm-hmm.
promised to send you something by 5 o'clock today, and you got it at 4:30, as
Yeah.
opposed to a week from tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they make good on their promises, large and mostly small, because most of the promises are small ones. I'm going to have a subject matter expert on the next call. I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
introduce you to Beth. She's my subject matter expert, as opposed to, oh, I'm sorry they couldn't make it. Why don't you and I just talk? Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
those myriad of little things, showing
Mm-hmm.
up well dressed or
Yeah.
properly dressed or appropriately dressed
Mm-hmm.
on time. And by on
Mm-hmm.
time means 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
Prepared.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
it's those small things that build to the buyer perceiving lower risk. Now that doesn't mean they're going to do anything, because I've seen big deals slip. Oh, thank you for the substantial discount. We have too much on our plate.
Yeah.
And at some level, that's true. And at a different level, the salesperson or sales team hasn't helped the customer reprioritize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're doing that. And here's the opportunity to, if you make the change,
Yeah.
you'd see an increase in manufacturing productivity by 5%, or you're
Yeah.
going to improve customer retention by 8%. Yeah, okay. I can see where I need to do that now.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Right?
can't
So,
wait. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's not the conversation about our marketing analytics tool pulls from 3 different places. That's a
Right.
conversation about your customer retention will go up by this amount when you provide more tailored messages.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so smart. And Lee, this has been really valuable, really actionable examples of how both leaders and sales reps can get better. And so for the sales leaders that are listening and or executives that are listening and are thinking we need to help our sellers improve, what do they need to do to get started?
So number one, and I have a soapbox on this. I've been in sales enablement for 20 plus years. There, for any organization that has more than 10 salespeople or 15 salespeople, there is a resource in your organization called sales enablement. Find the most senior person in sales enablement and say, we want to help you establish a sales enablement advisory board so that we can look more strategically at the issues facing sales and have sales leaders and marketing leaders and HR and finance and operations all on that board. Meet once a month so that we can all identify what's going on, where can we make changes to our benefit. A few years ago, I was at Google, and I personally was surprised by the announcement that we were integrating an acquisition into general population. And so there are about 350 salespeople that 3 weeks after I heard were going to be moved into general population. And we hadn't done any preparation. With a sales enablement board, we would have known a month or two earlier.
Yeah.
And so when I found out, I said to my manager, we need to do something. He said, what do you recommend? I said, we need to put on a week-long boot camp so we can help them integrate. They're getting new products, new territories, new managers, new quota, new systems, everything. If we don't support that movement, we're going to lose 3/4 of them. And that was a substantial piece of business for Google. And so in the same way, with a sales leader who wants to make improvements, they're asking their sales enablement team to be the leader for identifying areas for change. The leaders are so focused on this quarter and next quarter, they don't think about next year, and that's okay. Sales enablement thinks beyond that.
Yeah.
What are we going to do for this year and next year? How do we build skills this year that support next year? So the sales enablement team is the resource to provide that kind of support.
Yeah.
They can do a good internal diagnosis. Then, after they've done that, they can look for external resources. And there are people like me and others who can bring in specific expertise around SDR onboarding or around account planning, where if there are, when they identify specific areas for improvement, there are specialists that can help.
Yeah. No, this is great, Lee. And thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise and advice. So for the people who are ready to bring in an expert, how do they get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking, Carrie. They can find me at aceleragroup.com, ACELERA group.com. They can also find me on LinkedIn, Lee Levitt, Levitt. They can also find my blog and podcast at thoughtsonselling.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lee. I'll be sure to put all of that in the show notes as well. But I really appreciate your time and wisdom today. So thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. It's been fun.
Thanks for tuning in to Revenue Boost, a marketing podcast. If this episode with Lee Levitt gave you something to think about, share it with your sales or enablement lead today. Because the fastest way to fix pipeline issues, better prep, more coaching, and real curiosity. Don't forget to follow the show and leave a review, and head to revenuebasedmarketing.com for more growth strategies that align marketing, sales, and success teams for more sustainable revenue. Also, follow me on LinkedIn for more actionable advice. We'll see you soon.